what I propose, I will briefly introduce the conference, explaining that I will be moderating and keeping the time, and then the mic is yours. I will be pretty brief.
Thank you very much. We timed it at about 20 minutes.
So let's wait 1 small minute and then we'll start.
Thank you. Graham, you're fine?
Yep, all good.
Good. Just gonna switch this, switch on. Good. Hard mute. Hard mute off. Okay. Always have a hard mute.
Okay, let's get it on. Welcome all. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this MBM conference. My name is Bastien from Minology Clusters, and I will be hosting this session as a timekeeper, and I will also collect your questions. So your mic is off, so you're welcome to write your messages on the chat. And at the end of the presentation, we will be taking in those in consideration. So this is a 30-minute presentation. Basically, we propose around 20 minutes for the presentation itself, and then 10 minutes at the end for question and answers. So please, the mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everybody for joining this morning. What a beautiful day it is here from sunny South Africa. Graham and I are sitting in Johannesburg, South Africa. Let me introduce you to Graham Smale. He's the co-founder of Venture Designers. Graham and I will probably switch our video feeds off for the presentation. We just found it's less of a distraction for people, and it helps us to focus on giving the best presentation that we can. We tested the screen share. I'm sure you will be able to see our title slide there. And let's begin. Change brings opportunity. I mean, how many times have people said that before? But how do you find that opportunity, especially in a distributed, distanced, post-COVID world where we have less resources, people, cash, and ever-shortening time horizons? Companies really struggle with this problem currently, with everyone focused on trying to survive in this worldwide economic meltdown caused by the pandemic. It's difficult to think small, tactical, and strategic. But that's exactly what leaders need to focus on if they want to consistently and efficiently assess new revenue opportunities and initiatives. Making data-informed investment decisions, developing and launching new revenue-generating initiatives is a critical skill all executives need right now. What we're really saying is to get to the big profits, you have to start small. And today we will review a case study of an electronic manufacturing concern developing new products during one of the strictest COVID lockdowns in the world, South Africa. We will share our human-centric and robust processes, iterative processes, and how a clearly defined, repeatable process combined with the right online tools and facilitation can take you from survival to thrive in the current economy. We will cover 3 areas: why teams struggle with remote work and how to succeed, and how we help the business cut their new product development cycle down from 18 months to a mere 180 days. And then lastly, and I implore everybody to stick to the last bit of this, the real cost of innovation, presented by Graham, where we will show you the actual monetary calculations of what innovation costs. But before we start, let me just give you a little bit of a background on Venture Designers. The best way to describe the work that Venture Designers do is to compare us to a gold miner. For mines to be profitable as possible, they must ensure that they mine the richest ore they can find. This approach ensures the highest profits for their efforts. Mining a shaft can be compared to your organization launching a new project, developing a new product or service, or finding new opportunities, or even finding efficiencies within your business. The gold mine doesn't simply point to a direction underground and start digging. That would increase their cost of failure and risk overall. They need more certainty. They need to be more strategic. But how do you do that? How do they do that? They navigate the gold-bearing veins underground. They start digging and then they stop and sense. If they are mining the richest gold, then they respond with some adjustments if needed. You see, they only take the actions that yield the best business results. They make decisions based on data and not gut feelings or assumptions. This approach drives profits while drastically reducing management overhead because the people on the ground make data-driven decisions and adjustments within their locus of control. And that's exactly what we need nowadays. But unfortunately, most businesses outside of the mining industry do not use such an approach. This is where venture designers come in. We're like the gold miners. We help you find and navigate that golden vein in your customer segments, markets, product lines, customer journeys, and more. Our iterative processes help you deliver the best business results with the least effort while reducing your cost of failure and management overhead. So let's get started. Why do teams struggle to do meaningful and impactful work remotely? Ask yourself, are you really working remotely? Or are you simply talking remotely? Since the lockdowns were instituted, more companies were struggling and scrambling to get technologies such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams in place for the teams to work remotely. The fact that you have such tools in place does not necessarily mean that you have achieved successful remote working. Most of these tools simply address the communication part. Well, yes, I can't argue others have whiteboards and other functionalities. Most teams working remotely still miss the one most important ingredient to make remote work productive and meaningful, a clearly defined iterative process that's facilitated. We will share 7 benefits of having such a process in place. Venture Designer specializes in facilitating such remote processes. But let's look at the 7 benefits of following the right process for the right situation. Number 1, certainty. A good process makes sure everyone knows what needs to be done and what the team needs to achieve. Second of all, alignment. A good process creates alignment and inclusion in your team, thus creating a safer working environment that builds trust in the work that's been done. Having everyone on the same page creates a better situational awareness within your organization, resulting in a better and more efficient response to market shifts. Here's my favorite one. Saves cash. Having a clear process with desired outcomes, tracking, and accountability reduces your risk of doing the wrong thing and in turn reduces your cost of failure. You have increased speed. A good process helps you to efficiently work through the tasks and problems at hand and get to the best solutions or actions faster. Many clients have complained that they sit in 1 or 2 hour meetings, which after they think, why was I here? A good process ensures that the right people are there to achieve what is needed in the right time. Also, you build trust. A good process gives you clarity of purpose, process, and roles, increase engagement, contribution, and building trust. People learn that the clear process was followed to make decisions, increasing trust in the whole system, especially now when many of us have to make very difficult decisions. Here's a favorite of mine, being a single parent. Less stress. Without a well-defined and facilitated process, teams are often at the mercy of the opinions of either the person with the loudest voice or the most power, or maybe the highest person in the room. A good process reduces this and makes sure that the wisdom of the group is utilized to the maximum, not only increasing engagement, but reduces your management overhead if you are the leader of the team. And then lastly, something that's quite surprising to many people that we speak to about. Using a facilitator allows the senior team member, manager, or executive to step outside of their role and become a participant in creating the outcome. I think it's clear to see that allowing a clear, iterative process within your remote teams has many benefits and can deliver the results that you need in our shortened time horizons while being cost effective. So let's move over to the case study part. I'm going to hand you over to Graham Smale for this. Graham, if you can take over from here, I'll run the slides for you.
Thanks, Willem. So this is a story about a successful South African company that began its journey way back in 1965 as an electronic design organization. Now, some 55 years later, it has accomplished a feat of corporate longevity that in a hyper-competitive world where the half-life of a company in the S&P 500 is now 16 years. That's one hell of a feat. It pioneered many firsts and has serviced many industries in the application of its core competencies. And its current focus has led it to dominate its chosen market. And it's now a global player across 4 continents and 20 countries. Just give me the next slide, Willem. Like many innovative companies that end up dominating in industries, some of the pioneering innovation and entrepreneurial spirit has been overtaken, unfortunately, by the consequences and rigors of scaling a global engineering company and services businesses. Now, new product development cycles lengthened to 36 months, and the decision-making process was stifling innovation and risk-taking. Management did recognize that it was a problem, and they made changes. And they began to streamline the product approval process and managed to reduce it down from 30 months to 18 months with sort of approximately 6-month window for implementation. Unfortunately, the underlying approach to innovation had not changed and was still dominated by that epic fantasy novel called a business plan. The innovation team had been trying to progress a new product and business in the water sector, so different from their core product, and based on a business plan that had taken them some 6 months to prepare. The innovation team was running into a corporate brick wall on this initiative, despite this initiative being explicitly declared as a strategic project. So they recognized they could probably do with some external help, and that's where we were called in. And we offered an approach that runs atypical to normal consulting, whereby we facilitated a process for the team to take them through problem framing using our Future Finder product, and ideation, solution design, prototyping, and user testing with our Future Tester product. Now, all run 100% remotely and online in a series of rapid cycles called sprints. And we created and validated feedback that the solutions met a real need. Now, the reduced time to market and the cost of failure also were reduced. In addition to our facilitation offering, we coached the team to be able to run the process without us when we've left. Now, all of our products are based on a rapid iterative learning process grounded in human-centric design thinking and particularly in design sprints. Now, let's have a look at some of the numbers to illustrate the impact of a rapid learning approach. Next slide, Willem. Thank you. The cost here in euros and exclude the cost of our services, but the principle applies. So the costing is based on a number of full-time equivalent resources and the number of months involved in developing and launching the product with the cycles for the iterative learning approach. Now, work by our client had already reduced the development costs and timelines by 33%, but the process remained trapped in the old business plan, where market success would only become apparent and validated after launch some 24 months in this example. Now, using this approach, the potential cost of failure is the full investment in developing the product. Now, the iterative learning approach creates data to validate the stages as one works through the process. Firstly, whether you are building solutions to a real problem, that's called problem-solution fit. Only when that is validated, and then you can move on to whether the market will pay for the product and is it large enough to support a business, and that's called solution market fit. Now, each iteration creates learnings that allows for the project to be stopped, pivoted, or extended based on those learnings. And this significantly reduces the risk and cost of failure. An example here, almost at least 80%. So the rapid iteration process is also expected to reduce the overall cost of product development as the timelines to market are also shrinking by a further 50%. Next slide. So this case study is about the savings and risk reduction of developing a single product, which is likely to be only one in a portfolio of products encompassing everything from incremental innovation, the search for growth initiatives in the core, or adjacencies to that, or in the search for breakthrough products and services beyond these. Now, I'd like to illustrate how a framework on linking the budgeting for innovation to your financial goals. And I'll build it up one piece at a time and then put some numbers to illustrate. So it all starts with the current reality, the base, your today's business. Let's index it to a level of 100. Now, all businesses have some form of aspirational targets over some horizon, let's say 5 years, that result in some multiple of the current business. And we all like to call those the big, hairy, audacious goal, or BHAG. So the existing business has one force and one possibility embedded in the existing business. Firstly, the external environment exerts competitive and other pricing pressures that depress the revenue potential of the existing business, and that requires innovation spend to negate it. Countering this is to spend on incremental innovation on existing products and services at the core of your business. This is possibly well understood, yet it still requires an ongoing learning and innovation spend. Now, in your portfolio, you may also have a few clearly identified new growth initiatives and adjacencies, either in customers or technologies and markets. There's more uncertainty here, and learning is required. So the big challenge is that those three aspects, the depressive forces existing and the incremental, create a gap against your BHAG. And so this zone has to be filled through, be delivered through breakthrough innovation, business model, and strategic innovation. So what happens if disaster strikes, if we look at this through the lens of this model? Next slide, Willem. Well, in a COVID-type world, external depressive forces have just gone up. Next slide. In addition, survival behavior requires that innovation spending on even clearly understood initiatives has collapsed. So, should we kill our aspirations? Do we give up on them as well? So we believe that aspirational companies know that success lies in managing for short-term survival and continuing to invest in for the long term. Spending on innovation is not a sporadic choice. It is the ongoing cumulative spend that determines the success. So now I'm going to try and put some numbers to it and treat it a bit of a formula. So minus X is the impact of the depressive external forces. A is the impact of incremental innovation. C is the impact of known growth initiatives. And now E is the gap between the BHAG and the sum of those previous three. Now, if this gap were to be filled by buying in a business with a 20% earnings margin and you paid a 5 times price earnings ratio for that business, you would end up paying E, as illustrated the formula at the top of the slide. What's effectively saying is that in order to fill that gap, your investment either in buying a business or spending it to develop it yourself is approximately in the cost E. Now let's have a look at this model through the lens of some numbers. So I made an assumption that we're operating on an aggressive 15% per annum BHAG, which doubles the revenue every 5 years. I've set the depressive forces at 5%, so minus 5%, and against that we're going to spend 1% on innovation. Incremental innovation is expected to deliver 10% growth, against which we're going to spend 2% innovation. No new growth initiatives, an additional 5%, and because it's more uncertain, we're going to spend 5% on that. And the effect to be able to reach the BHAG is that the effective result is, and the combination of everything, is that 8.6% per annum needs to be spent on innovation, of which 82% is in the breakthrough category because of the large gap between the BHAG and what we know now. So in this table below that, let's assume a new entrant has come into the marketplace and depressive forces simply double. What that tells us is that innovation spend in order to beat that has to go up by almost 43%. Next slide. Okay. If we had a view that the world's going to return to some form of normality and our expectations of the future have essentially been dropped slightly, we've halved the expectations on the growth, but we're still going to spend the same amount of money. We virtually need to increase innovation spend by 251%. The table below that, so next slide, Willem. So take a worst case scenario. Post-COVID, the world just does not return to some form of normality, and we essentially have collapsed our growth expectations and our spend on innovation in order to survive. What this is telling us is that we need to spend approximately what we did before just to remain exactly the same. So in our view, zero spend on innovation may be a survival tactic to save cash now, but in the longer term, it's absolutely a death sentence. That's the basic message for today. Willem, over to you.
Thank you very much, Graham. I appreciate it. You know, I just want to get back to the gold miner analogy. Just like you showed there, we need to spend on innovation because, you know, it's otherwise it's a death sentence on what you're going to do. And just like the gold miner, you need to have that slow, iterative process. And it doesn't necessarily need to be slow. What I mean by that, you need to calmly approach this, make data-driven investment decisions. And that's the best advice that you can look at that. But the only way that you can get to that is to have a clearly defined process and stop and sense, just like the gold miner, are we on the golden vein? If not, we need to make adjustments on that. If anybody wants a copy of this slide deck with the numbers in it, just drop us an email. But we're open now for some questions, if you have any for us.
Willem, while we wait for questions, maybe we can just sort of exchange some views and then see what pops up in the chat.
Okay, cool.
Thank you very much, Graham and Willem. Do you hear me?
How do we help customers choose the right process, in your view?
Well, that's a very good thing. You have to understand that the context around it. It's just not. It would have been a perfect world if you could have the, you know, as I said in the Lord of the Rings, one ring to rule them all. You know, there's not one process to rule them all. There's an approach to that you can do, but you also have to sit back and look at the context and the tools that you have to use within those. And we've seen that, you know, we can have the same structure. The structure is there, but tools that go into it is very important. What are your thoughts on that?
So for me, I think the key points are about separating finding and then trying to find solutions and testing. So that's what we like to do, is to separate the discovery process of opportunity and then make choices on which opportunities to pursue. And from that, then see how we can rapidly ideate, create prototypes, get validated answers back from the marketplace through our sprinting process, and separating those two very, very clearly.
Yeah.
So that for me is an important piece of the puzzle.
But I want to add to that one specific thing that I think many companies let go, that they treat innovation as an event, something that needs to happen. It happens once off.
But then we have a question in the chat. Says, do we see different behaviors linked to cultural background to cope with COVID, and to think and about how to think about innovation after COVID?
Would you like to answer that, please?
So, I mean, our exposure is very much here in South Africa, and it's been, we've had one of the hardest lockdowns in the world, and the economy's cratered. And we also have an economy which prior to it we had 29% unemployment rate, and we're now heading north of 40%, possibly in the worst part of it up to 50%. So I think my experience is very much on what the challenges are here in South Africa, which may be worse than others. I think each country you can see through the way the governments are reacting, and the way people are reacting to the way governments are reacting, is that you're right, each country probably has an ethos and a way of thinking about what COVID is and what it might or might not be. But my experience about other parts of the world is possibly more limited.
Now, the only thing that I can add to that is, and you've heard me say that before as well, we need to, I wouldn't say give up or distance ourselves from somebody who's going to make a change in this. And you need to take charge of this situation yourself.
Yeah.
And you have to do it slowly, iteratively, with the least risk, with a little bit of resources that you have left to do this. Now is not the time to go on some big, massive initiative to like, yes, we're going to do this. Take slow, sense and respond. Think about the gold miner.
Yeah, I think the additional point is that times of maximum crisis, unfortunately, the snake oil salesman came out of the cracks very, very quickly. And it's very human to want to find the silver bullet, the one ring to rule them all, the one answer to go and test and try, and it's going to solve all my problems. That's not in the nature of being human. and learning and growing. And ultimately, a company is a group of human beings trying to find a future. So each individual and the groups inside a company need to figure out how to take control of what they can and how to win at the game that's in play.
Absolutely. Not the time to be an evil Knievel and try to jump the chasm, so to speak.
That's another question. What do you think of organizations adopting innovation as a journey? A change is constant. If you don't have innovate, you stagnate, or at worst you die. So how do you think of innovation as a journey? And the second question is, you take into consideration a lot of the human resources, less stress, trust, etc. Do you suggest that it's important to preserve your task force and take advantage of the COVID to remotivate the main forces of the enterprise? So there's both of those. One is about a journey, and the other is about protecting the human resources inside an organization.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that resonates purely with our approach as well. We work with the people on the ground, and it's about empowering them within their locus of control and their decision making. And that's what you need to look at. So many times I've said, speaking on stage, big companies fail at innovation because they try to innovate the business, but you can't innovate the business because it's an empty shell, just like this glass. In order to innovate, you need to innovate the people inside. Once the people are innovated, then the company becomes innovative. And if you can add a little bit on the journey,
I think that's very much so. When you've rephrased, if we think of a company as a group of individual humans who, through collective effort and individual effort and through conversations, live out the purpose of an organization, then you're right that those people in the process are on a journey, as each of us in our lives are on a journey. And we don't wake up or get born knowing everything. Every step, every day is another opportunity to learn. Absolutely. And so that's why I think thinking of innovation as a process is one way to look at it. Thinking of it as a never-ending journey, like life, is a much more appropriate approach, because it's not a destination. Innovation is, people talk about innovation as a destination. We need more of it. But you and I know and that it is a journey. And therefore, you start something today, you start it small, you see what it does, you see how it reacts, you see how your team members, the organization around you, the environment reacts. You step back and reflect on what it means. You internalize what it means and what it felt like to go through that experience. You try and figure out the learnings, and you move on again, and again, and again.
That's why we created the Future Builder process, because that's something where you go through the cycle continuously and it never ends. Something that you have to achieve. Is there another question, Graham?
Yeah, so there's a term called frugal innovation. So there's no doubt that in the current times of crisis, frugality is important. And unfortunately, far too many are suffering the dark side of frugality, which means I'm going to protect X% of my workforce by getting rid of the Y%. But organizations ultimately are self-serving and will protect themselves. But yes, it's about how to make it efficient. So it's not about, we talked about some really big numbers, 8% of your revenue. And it's not about spending it willy-nilly. You need to figure out that you're spending it right. Just as you talk about mining it, well, then you've got to figure out whether that piece of spend versus another spend is more effective for you.
Yes. And you can only get there with a clearly defined and facilitated process, which we found. Because once the teams go through it, then you have, if it's not facilitated, you have the issue with the power play within it. And now it's just about facilitating the results and delivering on the outcomes that the company is looking for.
Yeah. And I think a lot of challenge that many businesses may have is, how do you recognize the learnings and then not forget them? I've been in so many organizations where there is a process after something, and there's a whole list of learnings, and then it seems to go into an electronic file at the bottom end of a SharePoint site, and then never looked at again. And you could virtually take that same report out of the system and just says, let's hand it in for the next project. It's the same learnings. So
absolutely.
So therein lies another learning. How do you learn not to forget about the learning?
That's true. And that's I think that encompasses much of the work that we do, is to enforce that. It starts with the process, it ends with the practice.
Yeah.
So
I think we're coming up for our time. That's sort of most of the
feel like launch America. 4, 3.
Yeah.
With T-0.
And if anybody's still on the call with us, our email up there, generic email is up there. Email us. We'll quite happy to engage a conversation with you.
Absolutely. Thank you to everybody, and thank you to Minalogique for having us today. Really appreciate this.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Willem. I don't know if you hear me.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your sessions on the day.
Yes, we can hear you, David. Graham, Willem, thank you very much. We're grateful for this presentation, and we wish everyone great MBM meetings. Thank you.
Well done, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.